A short story I've improved called The Bet, which is actually a half true story. Michael had many dares in his life, but this one was one he wished he'd never agreed to. He'd always been scared of ghosts and had never been keen of the dark. Now he would have to endure the possibility of both. He'd lost the bet and there was no going back. He had to do it. His best friend Josh was there to see that he was going to go through with it after being the butt of so many pranks and dares himself. He was now getting his own back. It was a warm summer evening and they sat in the pub drinking and laughing. The last thing Michael wanted was to get drunk. He had a tent and a sleeping bag for warmth. He hoped it would be enough. He knew it was going to get colder in the evening. They were both 18 and felt invincible. There was £20 riding on this bet and Michael definitely needed the money. The sky was slowly darkening and Michael slipped his drink and he had a smile on his face, but he wasn't happy. He was worried. How he had got into this predicament he didn't know. It was the very thing he did not want to do. Life seemed to have a sense of humour and loved serving up the things that people don't want. Finally they finished their drink and set off. Michael had his sleeping bag in his rucksack and a bottle of water and a bar of chocolate to cheer him up. He had an old-style Walkman with one cassette jammed in there, the Boomtown Rats, an old favourite of his. They set off laughing and joking, but inside Michael was scared. He was too embarrassed to admit it, but he hated the dark, and he had read so many ghost stories and seen so many horror films that his imagination was on fire with scary possibilities. Josh thought it was hilarious, and he kept cracking jokes at Michael's expense. There was no going back, and with each step he was nearer his frightening destination, like a man walking the plank. This is the last bet I ever make, thought Michael dejectedly, as the first spots of rain fell on his head and the sky turned as black as his mood. Typically, thought, and he pulled his hood over his eyes, obscuring his angry face. It wasn't going to be easy putting the tent up in this, he thought. Michael thought of himself as an expert in outdoor activities, but in fact he knew very little. Just what he'd learnt from being in the Scouts, he knew how to pitch a tent. Michael hoped he was right as the rain fell heavier. The last thing he wanted was to be outside in the rain, with the flimsy broken down tent collapsed all around him. Finally they got to the graveyard and it looked spookier than Michael expected. He gulped as the moonlight shone on the old crumbling headstones. He felt like he was in a Hammer horror story, as the wind and the rain whipped all around him. More coming soon.